specifically will you do to keep attracting Hollywood to the state as competition from other states ramps up?
Well, what we have to do actually is protect the tax incentive program that we already have in place. I've spent the last few weeks, actually, I was in Shreveport visiting with some executives from Millennium Film Studios, which are doing special effects work in Shreveport, as well as Moonbot, which is a cutting-edge animation studio and center that's pulling students in from all over the country to come and animate and create the next great thing in movies in Louisiana, right here in Louisiana. And I asked the executives, what do you really need from us? And what they do want is protection of their business model, which has been successful and is driving so much of our economic development in North Louisiana and other areas of the state, will stay there. We're in the infancy of this business cycle. And what that means is we cannot pull the rug out from under these folks that have come here and invested their own private dollars into infrastructure, and which is returning a tremendous amount to our economy. So I would want to make sure that in the tightening budgetary crisis that we're going through, that the legislature, as well as the governor, understands that we are doing these things correctly.
I authored the motion picture tax credit legislation when I was in the Senate, so I have a great understanding of its value and its importance. I had to argue that credit was appropriate, argue to save it, argue to enhance it with the promise that it would pay dividends, and has it. It's created thousands of jobs, brought millions upon millions of dollars to this state. It is the true growth industry in Louisiana. The key not only is to preserve it, because other states are wising up to this and have figured out if they can leapfrog us, they're going to take this business. The key is to start creating the infrastructure in Louisiana that can support the industry. So we're not bringing grips and gaffers and set technicians and designers into Louisiana, but we're growing them in Louisiana. That's why it was important to create the community and technical college system, which was another piece of legislation I offered that's designed to train people for jobs in Louisiana, real paying jobs for folks who are not going to be engineers and doctors and lawyers, but who want to go to work. And we need to make certain that our industry training keeps up with the success we've gotten in bringing this industry to Louisiana.
You've both addressed the importance of tourism to the state. The BP oil disaster, as you know, took quite a significant toll on area tourism. And this week, of course, we hit the 6-month anniversary, or the 6-month mark, rather, since the Deepwater Horizon rig exploded. Do you think that the state was prepared in terms of a public relations capacity to handle that disaster? And what would you do in the next 6 months to continue to repair the lingering damage that remains from the disaster?
I think the state responded well in the wake of an unexpected disaster like that. So I do think there was a level of preparation that enabled us to try and get our message out. The reality is we weren't going to be able to overcome the perception that exists. Very quickly, I went to Toronto a week after Katrina to talk about the motion picture tax credit legislation. I was glad I went because the world thought the whole state was underwater. Right now, the world thinks Louisiana is awash in oil, that our oyster beds are completely contaminated, that our seafood's not safe. There's signs on restaurants in New York, we don't serve Gulf seafood. We've got to develop a very comprehensive and aggressive plan to assure the world that our seafood is safe, our people are ready to go back to work after the punitive Obama moratorium, and that we're going to be able to deliver the message that Louisiana is a place that you need to visit. The tourism has plummeted since the spill. It's a reality, but we've also got to overcome the perception that things are worse than they really are.
In terms of the state's response to the BP oil spill, I think it's very difficult to judge when you have something that's so unforeseen how well people respond or did not respond. I know that there has been a good conversation that is had for our state's readiness and preparedness for an issue like this in the Gulf. And not being an insider and being part of state government, I had to watch, like most of the rest of you, to see how we responded in what way. What I was heartened to see was that the people of Louisiana, once again, pulled together in a time of tremendous crisis and engaged in self-help and made sure that they could do what they could for their communities. Very similar to our response to the hurricanes that have devastated us. Going forward, it is true that we need to do something to make sure that our tourism continues to grow and prosper. There are some misperceptions out there about our seafood industry and whether it's being served appropriately. BP has given us $15 million towards that effort. Unfortunately, that's the same amount of money they gave to Alabama. And Alabama does not have near the seafood industry or the tourism industry that Louisiana does. Clearly, we need more money. We need to do it marketing appropriately. And we need to go, if we have to, into restaurants and say, take down those signs.
Thank you.
Let us suppose for a moment the not entirely implausible scenario that our governor should leave office for some reason And in that scenario, the lieutenant governor would have to step in and fill that term. If this were to happen and the new governor were to be faced with a crippling budget deficit, the question is, more taxes or not more taxes?
Caroline?
I'm not in favor of raising taxes. And as has been pointed out, I do not have a voting record of doing so. I think that people need to try as hard as we can, government included, to live within our means and control spending. It is something that will require a fresh set of eyes and a new voice, and yes, it may mean prioritizing, but that will not be done to an eye of my personal political future. It will be done for the people of Louisiana. They will tell us the priorities. Healthcare, education, our children, moving the state forward, finally out of the doldrums, out of being number 48 and 49 on every list that's important, and number 2 in things like infant mortality. These are the priorities that we should be having in Baton Rouge. How are we going to advance the debate in this state? Those would be my priorities. Should I be called upon to serve as governor? Let me be clear. I'm running for lieutenant governor. If I wanted to run for governor, I would have the courage directly to run for governor.
No new taxes. Obviously, I think that's what people expect now, is not to see their taxes go up, particularly in a time of economic decline and frustration. So the answer is I'm not looking for any new revenue sources. I'm going to be looking, as I looked when I chaired the Senate Finance Committee, for ways to reduce spending in government, to not just create a study, to put on the shelf with many other things on the shelf. We're the most studied state in America, I would say, and we've come up with the fewest solutions. We've tried over the years to come with some of those solutions, but they're very difficult to realize politically. The governor, though, is in a position to be able to direct how spending is prioritized and to submit a budget that reflects that. And if I were in that seat, that's exactly what I would do. It would not be politically easy. It would not result in high constant popularity rates, I'll tell you, because to make the difficult changes we need to make in government, you're going to have to say to some people, government cannot keep doing what it's been doing. And to have to say to some other sources, you're going to have to contribute. It's like what I've done in the Secretary of State's office by partnering with businesses to contribute to the support of our museums. That's what I'm going to do as Lieutenant Governor, create public-private partnerships to sustain the arts, sustain culture.
Thank you. And now we will have a round of rapid-fire questions, and Melanie will ask all 4 of the questions, and you will have 15 seconds to respond. Okay? Melanie?
What grade would you give Governor Bobby Jindal on his first term performance?
B+.
B.
What grade would you give President Barack Obama?
B+.
F.
In your opinion, which member of the current Louisiana congressional delegation has best represented the interests of the state of Louisiana?
Well, I'd say my own Congressman Bill Cassidy.
Congressman Lawson.
And this is a special election this year. If you lose, will you run again next year for the full term?
I think it depends on the direction of the state.
No, if I lose, I'll run for Secretary of State.
Okay, now back to Ashley, and we'll start back on questions with 1-minute answers.
There was just a mention of we can't keep doing what we've been doing. What is an example of failed politics of the past that you want to change?
That helps out, is it?
I don't know if he's trying to.
Yeah.
That would be start with Jay.
I would say the failure at an early stage to go in and say that government is not going to be able to do everything for everybody. And in the higher education arena, I would say we have not gone to higher education in a timely manner and demanded some programmatic reductions at universities, some serious discussion about how we can consolidate programs, save money. Look, for example, at workers' compensation costs, just as a one minor example, which are running something like 3 or 3.5% on some college campuses for positions that are primarily sedentary, instead of businesses that have a less than 1% workers' comp expenditure for high-risk positions. That's an example of the kind of targeted things we need to do to go in and find ways to set some real priorities. I think as a practical matter, we in Louisiana, for generations, and it goes all the way back to Huey Long, have tried to be all things to all people. And we just can't afford to do that in times of fiscal stress. We've got to prioritize.
Caroline?
I would say I would like to change the partisan nature of politics how it has become, and the vitriolic nature of unfounded and mean-spirited attacks. Certainly for an office like Lieutenant Governor, where you're supposed to promote the best and most positive side of your state and the people that are here, it's difficult to dwell in negativity and go forth and do that with all manner of seriousness. In terms of politically what has happened in this state, I would say that we need to stop putting our personal power and prestige in front of those who are working every day very hard just to make ends meet. And by that I mean taking a six-figure salary and continuing to accept outside employment, voting yourself lifetime health care benefits, voting taxes over and over again on people, on hunters, on fishermen, on shrimpers, on LSU students. By that I also mean continuing to do business with a firm that continues to do business with the state of Louisiana. I think there are many of us that are struggling very hard to keep it clean and keep ourselves accountable, and I plan to join everyone in that number.